I looked out the window of our tour bus at the glowing lights of Seattle at night and absent-mindedly strummed my guitar. The good old Gibson, worn on the fingerboard from endless rehearsals and gigs, resonated with a quiet, almost intimate sound. Our band Eclipse was in the middle of its first big American tour. 30 cities in 3 months, a schedule that had seemed insane 6 months ago, when Raven, our manager, had first brought it up. Somewhere in the back of the bus, Dex was drumming softly on his practice pads. Our drummer couldn't go a day without it. His black dreadlocks swayed in time with the music, and his tattooed arms moved with mechanical precision. He'd always been like that, pedantic to the point of obsession when it came to rhythm. Scarlett was dozing on the couch, resting her head on her favorite cat-shaped pillow that she always carried with her. Even in her sleep, she looked gorgeous, her red hair spilling over her shoulders, her long eyelashes twitching. 3 years of marriage, and I still couldn't get enough of her. I remember the first time I saw her at the music store in Portland where she worked. I was looking for new strings, and I found the love of my life. Her synthesizer playing struck me then. Scarlett was playing Lennon's Imagine, and it was like a sign from above. "Hey, romantic, why don't we finish the arrangement?" Brody's voice snapped me out of my reverie. He was sitting at a small table tucked into a laptop with a recording program open. His blonde, almost white hair was pulled back into a casual bun, and his nose was covered with a pair of round, thin-rimmed glasses. Brody wasn't just a bass player. He'd been my best friend since high school. He was the one who'd supported me when I decided to drop out of college for music. Now, just writing down an idea, I reached for the notebook I always kept handy. The last week had been especially productive. New songs were literally begging to be put to paper. Maybe it was the endless road, the flashing cities, and the energy of the concerts. Ashton, our sound engineer, was working on his laptop at the other end of the bus. His graying temples and the wrinkles around his eyes made him look older than the rest of us. But his enthusiasm and dedication to the music could give any 20-year-old a head start. "Liam, don't forget soundcheck tomorrow at 9, he mumbled without taking his eyes off the screen. Raven sat at her makeshift workstation, a folding table littered with papers and charts. She was the true embodiment of her name, black as tar hair, sharp eyes, and a perpetual black pantsuit. "Guys, there's an important gig tomorrow." She looked up from her clipboard. "There'll be representatives from several major labels. We need to put our best foot forward." I nodded, feeling everything inside clench with anticipation. We'd been coming to this moment for a long time. We started out in small bars in Portland, where the crowd was more interested in beer than music. Then there were the clubs that gradually grew in size, the first fans, the first autographs. And now here we were, on a nationwide tour, with a growing army of fans and the prospect of a major label contract. Scarlett squirmed on the couch and opened her eyes. "What time is it?" she asked sleepily, stretching like a cat. "Almost midnight, sleepyhead," I replied, putting the guitar aside. "Why don't you go to the sleeping section?" "No, I want to sit with you guys some more." She got up and walked over to the fridge and pulled out a Diet Coke. Her favorite habit is drinking soda before bed, no matter how much I convince her it's bad for her. Brody looked up from his laptop. "Speaking of tomorrow's set list, why don't we add a new song? The one we practiced last week?" "Shadows of Yesterday?" I clarified. "I don't know, it's still raw." "But it's sincere," Scarlett put in, taking a seat next to me. She smelled like vanilla shampoo and something else that was subtly familiar. "The audience will smell it." Raven tapped her pen thoughtfully on the clipboard. "A risk, sure. But if it comes out well, the label reps will appreciate the spontaneity and boldness. I'm all for it." Dex stopped his endless drumming meditation. "Just let's run it through again at soundcheck. I want to be sure of every transition." I looked at them all, my musical family, each with their own quirks and idiosyncrasies, but together we were creating something special. Dex with his perfectionism and rhythm, Brody with his technical knowledge and flair for arrangements, Scarlett whose keyboards added depth and layers to our music, Ashton who turned our sound into perfection, and Raven, who got us here in the first place. The bus rocked gently on a curve. The lights of the nighttime city floated by outside the window, and I thought about tomorrow's concert. Every show lately was special, We were growing, changing, finding a new sound. The fans noticed it, and there were more and more of them. At the last show in Chicago, the audience was chanting my lyrics. It was like the most beautiful dream. "What are you thinking about?" Scarlett nudged me lightly with her shoulder. "About how we started out," I smiled. "Remember our first gig together? That bar on 7th Street? Where my synthesizer broke right in the middle of the gig." She laughed. "How to forget? I almost cried on stage then." "Well, you've got 3 now," Brody winked, still working on the arrangement. Raven stood up and stretched. "Okay, everyone to bed. Big day tomorrow, we need to be in shape. And no alcohol after the concert. We're moving to Portland the day after tomorrow." I looked at the clock. It was indeed time. I needed to be fresh and organized tomorrow. Picking up my guitar, I headed for the sleeping section of the bus. Scarlett followed me, answering something on her phone along the way. "Good night, lovebirds," Dex shouted after me, and everyone laughed. As I drifted off to sleep in the narrow tour bunk, I thought about how our lives had changed over the past year. The music I started writing in my parents' garage was now being played in clubs all over the country. My lyrics, born out of personal experiences and nightly musings, were being sung by strangers. It was like a dream come true, only better, because I had her, my Scarlett, and my best friends who had become family. As I fell asleep, I could hear Scarlett humming the melody of our new song as she settled into the bunk next to me. Tomorrow would be a big day, but right now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The morning began with the usual chaos. Ashton was setting up equipment on the stage, his graying temples glistening in the spotlight. Dex was methodically tapping out the rhythm of a new song, whispering the score to himself. I sat on the edge of the stage, strumming the strings and watching the tech team set up the amps. The cool air of the empty auditorium seemed electrified. The place would be a sea of people in a few hours. "Liam, check the mic," Ashton's voice echoed through the room. I stood up, coughed, and began to sing. My thoughts were jumbled. I hadn't slept much the night before, thinking about the new song, worrying about its premiere. Insomnia had become my frequent companion lately. Scarlett was late for soundcheck. She ran into the auditorium, tying her red hair into a bun as she went, with a cardboard cup of coffee in her hand. "Sorry, the line at Starbucks was huge," she pecked my cheek, and I caught a whiff of an unfamiliar perfume. Odd, she usually only uses her favorite vanilla perfume. "Is everyone here?" "Great." Raven appeared seemingly out of nowhere, wearing her usual black suit. "Let's run through the new song. And Liam, try not to go so deep into yourself during the show tonight. The audience needs the rapport." I nodded, even though everything squeezed inside. The last few gigs I'd really been a bit aloof. Maybe it was the fatigue from the tour, or maybe... I looked over at Scarlett, who was tuning her synthesizer. Something had changed lately, something elusive. Brody plugged in his bass and ran his hand over the strings. "Shall we start with the chorus? That's where the hardest transition is." He looked fresh and alert, even though he was still working on the arrangements when I went to bed last night. We started playing. Music has always helped me forget my worries, dissolve into melody and rhythm. But tonight something was wrong. I noticed Scarlett and Brody exchanging signs as they played, and I faltered for a second. Dex shook his head unhappily. "Whoa, whoa!" Raven held up a hand. "Liam, where are you hovering? Pull yourself together. We only have 2 hours until the concert." I rubbed my eyes. "Sorry, didn't get enough sleep. Let's do it again." The next run-through went better. We played the entire set list, including the new song. Ashton worked his magic on the sound, getting the perfect balance. When we were done, the technicians started preparing the stage for the evening's performance. In the dressing room, I tried to concentrate on the lyrics, but my mind kept slipping away. Scarlett had disappeared. She said she wanted to go for a walk before the concert. We'd always spent that time together before, tuning into the show, sharing our worries. Now, "Hey, you okay?" Brody crouched next to me, holding out a bottle of water. "You look tense." "I'm fine." I took a sip. "Just excited about the new song." "It'll be fine." He patted my shoulder. "By the way, have you seen my cable? The special one for the bass?" No, I shook my head. Ask Scarlett, maybe she's seen it. Oh, right. He pulled out his phone and quickly typed a message. Weird. Why hadn't I gone looking for her myself? The time until the concert stretched agonizingly slow. I was scrolling through the band's Instagram. Fans were sharing photos from past shows, writing enthusiastic comments. One photo of Scarlett in particular had a lot of comments. She really became the audience's favorite. My beautiful wife. I came across a comment where someone noted how good Scarlett and Brody looked during their on-stage parts together. An unpleasant feeling moved inside. I hastily closed the app. An hour before the concert, Scarlett returned, her cheeks flushed from the cool evening air, her eyes sparkling. You wouldn't believe how many fans are already in line. She plopped down on the couch next to me. And guess what? They sang our midnight tale. That's great, I tried to smile. Where'd you go for a walk? Oh, just around the neighborhood. She waved her hand and started pulling out her stage outfit. Need to change. I watched her rummage through her bag and tried to figure out what had changed. When had it started? Maybe I'm working too hard on new material. Maybe I'm not paying enough attention to her? Raven peeked into the dressing room. 20 minutes. Liam, are you ready? Yeah. I stood up and walked over to the mirror. The reflection showed a tired young man with disheveled dark hair and worry in his eyes. I pulled on my favorite denim jacket, the same one I'd worn to our first concert, a good luck charm. Just before I went on stage, I kissed Scarlett, as usual. It was our tradition, a little ritual before every show. But tonight it was a rushed kiss, as if she were in a hurry to get away from me. The auditorium erupted in screams as we took the stage. The first chords, the first words of the song, and reality dissolved into the music. I sang, staring into the darkness of the hall, where hundreds of phones glowed like stars. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Scarlett swaying to the beat of the music at her synthesizers, Brody moving with his bass, Dex completely immersed in the rhythm. During Shadows of Yesterday, something went wrong. I noticed Brody walk up to Scarlett during his solo. This was not intended by the production. They exchanged some glances, and I almost forgot the words of the next verse. I was saved by professionalism. My body remembered what to do, even when my mind was somewhere far away. After the concert, the dressing room was filled with the usual bustle. Congratulations, discussion of the performance, plans for tomorrow. Raven was glowing. The label representatives were impressed. Ashton was already scribbling notes on the sound. Dex massaged his tired arms. Great performance! Brody put his arm around my shoulders, especially the new song. The audience loved it. I nodded, trying to smile. For some reason, his touch seemed unpleasant. Yeah, it was pretty good. Scarlett was gathering her things, constantly distracted by her phone. Honey, I think I might go for a walk. I want to get some air after the concert. Maybe together? I tried to catch her eye. No, you wanted to work on some new material. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek. Don't wait up for me if you want to go to bed. I watched her walk out of the dressing room and felt something inside clench tighter and tighter. A few minutes later, I noticed that Brody had disappeared somewhere too. At night, lying in my bunk on the bus, I listened as Scarlett quietly made her way to her bed. She smelled of night air and something else, something elusive. I pretended to be asleep, though inside everything was screaming with the urge to ask where she was, why it was so late, why everything had changed. My phone vibrated softly, a message from Raven with tomorrow's schedule. I looked at the time, 3 a.m. The lights of the night city floated outside the window, and a new tune was playing in my head, sad and unsettling. Maybe it would be the beginning of a new song, a song about losing something important without even realizing when it started. Portland greeted us with rain. I was sitting by the window at our favorite cafe not far from the concert venue where the show was to take place in the evening. This place was special to Scarlett and me. It was where I had proposed to her 2 years ago. Now, her chair across the hall was empty. She'd said she wanted to rehearse a new part with Brody for the next concert. The barista brought out my Americano, black, no sugar as always. I absently ran my finger along the rim of the cup, watching the raindrops on the glass. The last 3 days had been a strange dream. Scarlett had become more and more distant, more and more absent after concerts, and I began to notice details that had escaped my attention before. My phone vibrated. A message from Dex. "Where are you? Rehearsal's in an hour." I finished my cooled coffee and headed for the exit, throwing on the hood of my old sweatshirt as I went. On my way to the club, I passed the record store where I'd once met Scarlett. The windows were covered with posters, including one for our concert tonight. Eclipse in big letters, and our names below. Mine and hers next to each other, as always. The club was unusually quiet, with only Ashton fiddling with the equipment, muttering something to himself. "Have you seen the others?" I asked, pulling my guitar out of its case. "Brody and Scarlett are practicing in the back room." He didn't even lift his head from the remote. "Raven's in some kind of meeting with the organizers. Dex will be here soon." I nodded, trying not to give any sign of how unpleasantly my heart prickled. Scarlett used to always rehearse with me. We could spend hours picking out the perfect sound, arguing over the nuances of the arrangement, laughing over failed attempts. Now, the muffled sounds of music came from the far room. I headed that way, but froze at the door when I heard voices. "No, that won't do," came Scarlett's voice. "Let's do it again, but slower." "Why don't we try it in a different key?" Brody. "Look, if I play it like this." The music faded, and there was a strange pause. I reached for the doorknob, but something stopped me. Inside, everything clenched with foreboding. "Brody." Scarlett's voice sounded especially soft. "We shouldn't." At that moment, the front door of the club swung open with a clatter. Dex appeared with his drumsticks. "Hey people, who's ready to rock?" I recoiled from the door and hurried back to the stage, feeling my heart pounding. What was that? What had I just heard? And more importantly, what had I not heard? The rehearsal passed as if in a fog. I played and sang mechanically, but my thoughts were far away. Scarlett stood behind her synthesizers as usual, but I caught her glances at Brody. Or was it just me imagining it? "Liam, you're hovering somewhere again." Raven appeared as if out of nowhere. "What's been going on with you lately?" "Nothing's wrong," I tried to smile. "Just tired for a bit." She gave me a scrutinizing look. "Big gig tonight. Pull yourself together." After rehearsal, I sat in the dressing room, strumming my guitar and trying to compose a new song. But instead of a melody, my head was filled with scraps of an overheard conversation. They shouldn't what? "Hey, why are you frowning?" Scarlett took a seat next to me and I caught a whiff of her new perfume, not the one she'd used this morning. "Where have you been all day?" The question popped out on its own. Where? Rehearsing, you know." She pulled out a mirror and started fixing her makeup. "By the way, I've arranged with the guys to go to the bar after the concert. Are you coming?" "What guys?" "Well, with Brody, Dex. It'll be fun." I shook my head. "Gotta work on some new material." "Again?" She sighed. "Liam, all you've been doing lately is working. Maybe you should unwind a little." I looked at her. So beautiful, so dear, and yet so distant. "Remember how we met? Here in Portland?" She smiled. "Of course. You were looking for strings and asked me about Lennon. And do you remember what you said then? That Imagine was the best song of all time." She stood up. "Liam, what's this conversation about?" It came to mind." I lowered my eyes. The concert started as usual. Full house, screaming fans, the energy of the live music. But something was off. I noticed every look, every gesture between Scarlett and Brody. During one song, they played back to back. It was their thing. The fans always loved it. But tonight, I felt like I was seeing more of that. In the middle of the show, I announced a new song. This song is called Shadows of Yesterday. It's about how sometimes we lose something important without even noticing it. I looked at Scarlett. She had her eyes down. After the concert, the dressing room was filled with the usual bustle. Raven was discussing the details of the next show with someone on the phone. Ashton was packing up equipment. Dex was going to the bar. "Sure you're not coming with us?" Scarlett stood at the mirror, gathering her hair into a ponytail. No, I shook my head. Go have fun. She kissed me on the cheek and scurried out of the dressing room. A minute later, Brody left without even saying goodbye. It wasn't like him. I was alone in the empty dressing room. I took out my notebook and started writing, the words pouring out, bitter and anxious. A new song was born out of pain and fear of loss. Around 3 in the morning, I heard them coming back to the bus. Laughter, whispers, the sound of stumbling footsteps. I lay in the dark, listening to every sound. Scarlett snuck into her bunk, humming something under her breath. "Did you have a good walk?" I asked into the darkness. She flinched. "Oh, you're awake? Yeah, it was fun. Too bad you didn't go." I remained silent. In the silence of the bus, all I could hear was the measured hum of the air conditioner and someone's quiet snoring. Dex, I think. "Liam?" Scarlett whispered. "Are you asleep?" I didn't answer again. What could I say? That I saw her smiling at Brody, that I heard their strange conversation, that I noticed them furtively glancing at each other on stage. In the morning, I had a headache, the result of a sleepless night. I sat in the small kitchen of the bus, staring into a cup of instant coffee. Outside the window, it was raining again. Portland was saying goodbye to us with its tears, and somehow it seemed very symbolic. San Francisco greeted us with bright sunshine and a cool breeze off the bay. I was sitting on the small veranda of the hotel where they put us up for 2 days between shows, a rare luxury on tour. Usually we slept on the bus, but Raven had insisted on a full night's rest before the big shows. I had my notebook open with the lyrics to the new songs in front of me, but I couldn't concentrate. The last 3 days had been endless torture. I hadn't slept well, I hadn't eaten much, and my mind was a kaleidoscope of suspicions and fears. Scarlett was asleep in our room. She'd come back from another rehearsal at midnight last night. She smelled of wine and someone else's cologne. "The guys and I went to the bar," she said, avoiding my gaze. I pretended to believe it, even though everything was turning upside down inside. My phone vibrated. A message from Dex. "Bro, are you okay? You look like a zombie the last few days." I didn't bother answering. What could I write? "I think my wife and best friend?" No, I couldn't even mentally finish that sentence. From the room came the sound of an incoming message on Scarlett's phone. I knew I shouldn't do this, but my feet carried me into the room. She was sound asleep, curled up on her side of the bed. Her phone was on the nightstand, the screen still glowing. I glanced at the notification, a message from Brody. "Good morning, sunshine. Don't forget to..." The screen went out, cutting off the message. My hands were shaking as I returned to the veranda. "Sunshine. Since when did Brody call my wife Sunshine?" There was a knock on the room door. It was Raven with another news update. "Liam, there's a local radio interview in an hour. Clean yourself up, you look terrible." Thanks for the compliment. I tried to smile, but only a crooked grimace came out. "Seriously, what's going on with you?" She took a seat next to me. "You haven't been yourself lately. Problems with the new material?" "No, the material is just going well." I pointed to the notebook. "Just tired, I guess." Raven looked at me carefully. "You know, maybe you should get more rest. Less sitting over songs at night?" If she knew it wasn't the songs that were keeping me awake. The 5 of us drove to the radio station, me, Scarlett, Brody, Dex, and Raven. In the car, I deliberately sat in the front, next to the driver. I didn't want to see them looking at each other in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to notice their knees, accidentally, touching at every turn. The interview went by like a blur. I answered questions mechanically, smiled when necessary, even played an acoustic version of our latest hit. The host was delighted with the chemistry between the band members. If only he knew. "How do you and your wife work together?" he asked me. "Does the personal relationship interfere with the creative process?" I looked at Scarlett. She was sitting with her leg over her leg, in her favorite black dress. Beautiful, confident, a stranger. "On the contrary," I heard my voice say, "music brings you closer together." After the interview, we drove to sound check. In the car, Brody was showing Scarlett something on his phone, and they were laughing quietly. I was looking out the window and counting traffic lights, trying not to think about what was going on in the back seat. At soundcheck, I deliberately delayed tuning my guitar while watching them. They were standing at the synthesizers, ostensibly discussing a new arrangement. But I could see how close they were standing to each other. His hand casually touching her shoulder. Her smile, that special smile that used to be reserved for me. "Liam, can we get started?" Ashton's voice snapped me out of my observation. "Time's running out." We started playing, but everything was going wrong. I was mixing up chords, forgetting words, getting off rhythm. After the third failed attempt, Raven called a break. "What's going on?" Scarlett came up to me while I was wiping the strings. "You seem kind of distracted." "Really?" I looked into her eyes. "And you've been a little too cheerful lately." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "Nothing." I looked away. "Go. Brody's waiting for you over there." "Liam, what?" But she didn't answer, just shook her head and went back to her synthesizers. A moment later, I heard her discussing something quietly with Brody. That evening at the hotel, I sat in the lobby, strumming the strings of my acoustic guitar, writing a new song, bitter, angry, desperate. Scarlett said she wanted to take an evening stroll through the city, alone. Alone, of course. "Hey, can I join you?" Dex plopped into the chair next to her. "Listen, me and the guys are worried. You haven't been yourself lately." "It's okay." I continued to strum the strings. "Come on, I can tell. Problems with Scarlett?" I faltered on a chord. "What makes you say that?" "Well, you barely talk. She's always missing somewhere." "You're observant." I tried to smile. "Look, if you want to talk, I don't." I stood up abruptly. "Sorry, I need to work on some new material." Back in the room, I sat in the dark, staring at the city lights outside the window. Scarlett's phone lay on the bed. She'd forgotten it in her haste. The screen lit up again. Another message from Brody. I could just pick it up and read it. Find out the truth. Or the thing I fear most. My hand reached for the phone, but I stopped myself. No, I didn't. I won't stoop to that. Scarlett came back at midnight. She smelled of night air and that very foreign cologne. She slipped quietly into the bathroom, turned on the water. I lay there pretending to be asleep and listened to the sound of the water mingling with the sound of the blood in my temples. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of her voice. She was talking on the phone on the balcony. "No, he doesn't suspect anything. Yes, tonight. Of course." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to chase away the unsolicited tears. A new tune was playing in my head, sad, like a requiem for our love. Maybe this would become my best song, a song about betrayal. At breakfast at the hotel, I watched her sit next to Brody, their hands supposedly casually touching as they picked up the salt shaker, glancing across the table. Raven was saying something about the evening concert, but I couldn't hear. My ears were buzzing and everything was blurring in front of my eyes. "Liam?" Raven's voice brought me back to reality. "Are you listening?" "Yeah, of course." I stirred the cooled coffee. "The concert, 8 o'clock tonight, I remember." "And try to be in shape tonight." She looked at me with concern. "The last few performances have been not at your usual level." I nodded, watching Scarlett laugh at some of Brody's jokes. I wonder if they too remember how he was my best man at our wedding 3 years ago. How he gave a touching speech about friendship and love. How he vowed to always be there for me. "Always be there for me," I whispered, except I didn't specify with whom. The dressing room of the Warfield Club was small and stuffy. I sat in front of the mirror, mechanically strumming my guitar and watching my reflection. There were dark circles under my eyes, and the stubble I'd forgotten to shave made my face look gaunt and alien. On a nearby chair lay my concert jacket, the same denim one, the one with the scuffs on the elbows. A good luck charm. Only lately, luck seemed to have turned its back on me. Behind the wall, Dex was warming up on the practice pad, his precise, methodical rhythm counting down the minutes until the concert began. Boom, 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 like heartbeats. My heart, which seemed about to burst with pain and suspicion. 20 minutes to go. Raven peeked into the dressing room. "Liam, are you ready? You look..." She faltered, tired. "I'm fine." I lied, pulling my jacket on. My hands were shaking, and there was no way I could get into the sleeve. Scarlett's laughter could be heard in the hallway, and a second later she appeared in the doorway with Brody. They were talking animatedly, but they stopped talking at the sight of me. Scarlett was beautiful in her new stage outfit, a black dress with silver threads, high boots, and her red hair in a sloppy bun. I remembered picking out that dress together in Portland. Now she was wearing it for him? Honey, did you get new pics? Her voice sounded casual, like nothing was happening, like she wasn't ruining our world with her little betrayals. Yeah. I patted my jacket pocket without looking at her. Brody shifted from foot to foot. Liam, why don't we run through the beginning of Midnight Tale? There's a new bass line. No time. I stood up abruptly. I'm going to go check the guitar. On stage, the technicians were finishing up the last of their preparations. Ashton was tinkering with the console, his graying temples glistening in the spotlight. I ran my hand over the fingerboard of my Gibson, the faithful companion of so many concerts. The hall was already buzzing on the other side of the curtain like a swarm in front of a beehive. Sound check, 1, 2. My voice sounded muffled through the monitors. I coughed and tried again. It takes focus. Gotta be professional no matter what was going on in my personal life. Scarlett took her place at the synthesizers. 3 keyboard instruments arranged in a semicircle, her little kingdom on stage. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see her adjusting the monitors, checking the settings. It's business as usual, except nothing will ever be the same again. 2 minutes, Raven commanded. Dex took a seat behind the drum kit, craning his neck, warming up. His dreadlocks were gathered into a high ponytail. He always did that before a show. Brody plugged in his bass, ran his hand over the strings, and a thick, velvety sound filled the space. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe deeply, not to think, just play. The curtain rose, and the hall exploded with screams. 2,000 people, and everyone had come to hear our songs, our music, our stories. Stories of love and betrayal, of hope and pain. If they only knew what kind of story we are living right now. The first chord, and reality disappeared. All that was left was the music, the spotlight, and a sea of phones glowing in the darkness of the hall. I sang Chase the Light, our first hit song, a song about finding your way, about dreams and aspirations. I wrote it 3 years ago when Scarlett and I were first married. It seemed so simple and straightforward then. Brody came closer during his solo. It was a part of the show, practiced hundreds of times. We played back to back, turning the crowd on. It used to be a moment of true brotherhood on stage. Now every touch resonated with pain in my chest. His guitar strap was touching my back and I could barely contain myself from recoiling. Thank you, San Francisco! I shouted into the microphone after the first block of songs. Sweat was pouring into my eyes. My t-shirt was soaking wet under my jacket. This next song is called Shadows of Yesterday. It's about how sometimes we lose the most precious things without even noticing it. I looked at Scarlett. She had her eyes down, pretending to adjust the settings on the synthesizer. Her fingers slid across the keys, drawing out the first notes of the intro. This part was written especially for her, simple and complex at the same time, like our relationship. During the playback, Brody approached her again, their signature moment that fans loved so much. They played while looking at each other, smiling some sort of secret smile of their own. I forgot the words to the next verse, just stood there and watched my world crumble to the enthusiastic screams of the crowd. Liam, pull yourself together! Raven hissed from backstage. I shook my head and continued singing, mechanically like a robot. The words I'd written about love and loyalty now sounded like a bitter taunt. The concert lasted 2 hours, but it seemed like an eternity. Every song, every loss, every moment on stage was drenched in pain and the realization of the inevitable. I saw how they exchanged glances, how their fingers accidentally touched during breaks between songs, how she smiled at his jokes. On the last song, Dreams We Share, I almost snapped. This is the song I wrote for our wedding. Scarlett had cried when she first heard it. Now she played her part with a stone face, and I could barely squeeze out words about eternal love and shared dreams. After the concert, The dressing room was filled with the usual hustle and bustle. Congratulations, discussion of the performance, plans for tomorrow. Raven was saying something about a meeting with the label representatives. Ashton was taking notes on the sound. Dex massaged his tired arms. Great performance! Brody patted my shoulder. His touch burned like acid. Scarlett was gathering her things, constantly glancing at her phone. Honey, the guys and I wanted to take a walk, celebrate our success. Will you come with us? No. I started to stow my guitar in its case, trying not to look at them. Tired? Suit yourself. She pecked my cheek. She smelled like perfume and sweat after a concert, a familiar native odor. When did it stop being real? They left. Scarlett, Brody, Dex, and a few technicians. I was alone in the dressing room, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Who was that man with the wan eyes and the bitter crease at his lips? Where is that happy guy who wrote love songs and believed in eternal friendship? The phone vibrated. A message from a fan on Instagram. Amazing concert. You and your wife are such a beautiful couple. I chuckled bitterly. If only they knew. I walked back to the hotel, though it took almost an hour. I wandered the night streets of San Francisco, breathing in the cool air from the bay. A new tune was spinning in my head, heavy, angry, desperate. Maybe this would become my best song. A song about the pain of losing everything at once, love and friendship, trust and faith. In the room, I sat by the window with my guitar. My fingers automatically found the chords, folding them into a new composition. The lights of the night city flickered outside the window, and somewhere out there, in one of the bars, my wife was laughing at my best friend's jokes, and I was sitting here, alone, trying to turn my pain into music. Scarlett came home at midnight. I pretended to be asleep, listening to her quietly pacing the room, the sound of the water in the shower, the rustle of her clothes. When she lay down, I smelled a familiar odor, her shampoo, perfume, and something else. Something foreign, or someone else's. All night I lay awake, listening to her steady breathing, remembering how we'd met, how we'd fallen in love, how we'd made plans for the future. Where and when did it all go wrong? What did I do wrong? Or what didn't I do? In the morning, we had to move to the next town, another concert, another dressing room, another night of pretending. But something had changed in me. Something had broken completely. And now I knew I had to do something. I had to find out the truth, no matter how bitter it was. Los Angeles was melting hot. I sat in the shade at the club's service entrance, trying to tune my guitar, the strings constantly fraying from the humidity. There were cigarette butts and crumpled granola bars on the pavement. Scarlett always ate them before a show, said it was her good luck ritual. We used to have a lot of rituals like that together. Now, our tour bus stood nearby, its black sides gleaming in the sun. The technicians were unloading equipment, the usual pre-concert bustle. Ashton commanded the process, checking his shabby notebook every now and then. His neat handwriting outlined every minute of preparation as always. Everything had to be perfect. I glanced at my watch. 2 hours to sound check. Scarlett and Brody were gone again, working on a new arrangement. That's all they'd been doing lately. Always the two of them, always somewhere away from the others. Hey, you look lousy. Dex crouched next to him, holding out a bottle of water. Why don't you go see a doctor? You've really turned in the last month. I shook my head. Just not getting enough sleep. Because of the new songs? He tapped his sticks on his knee, beating out some rhythm only he could understand. Yeah, I lied. Lots of ideas in my head. I hadn't actually written anything new in a week. All the melodies in my head were turning into a cacophony of pain and suspicion. Every line, every chord screamed the same thing. Betrayal. My phone vibrated. A message from Raven. Come by my office. We need to talk. The office was the small room at the club where she usually sat with her laptop and endless paperwork. I found her looking at some charts. Have a seat. She nodded to a chair. Liam, we need to have a serious talk. About what? I sank down into the rickety chair, feeling everything inside clench. About your condition. The last few performances. They're not on the level we're used to. You're distracted, forgetting words, skipping verses. What's going on? I looked at the wall behind her where our tour schedule hung. Colorful markings, arrows, dates. Usually so crisp and clear, now it was blurring before my eyes. Nothing's going on. My voice sounded muffled, just tired. Raven sighed. Liam, I've known you for years. It's not just tiredness. It's something personal, right? Something with Scarlett? I stood up abruptly. I have to go to sound check. Sit down. Her voice became harsher. Sound check is in an hour. We have time to talk. About what? About how my wife and best friend. I paused, feeling a lump come up to my throat. So you've noticed. She leaned back in her chair. Noticed what? Their closeness. I stared at her, feeling the ground go from under my feet. So it wasn't imagined. So it wasn't paranoia. So all those looks, the touching, the long rehearsals. How long? My voice shook. Liam. She shook her head. I'm not sure how. How long have you known? I almost shouted. I've suspected for the last 2 weeks. But that's just a suspicion. I sprinted out of the room, not listening to what she was yelling after me. My ears were buzzing, my eyes were blurry. My feet carried me toward the rehearsal room where the muffled sounds of music were coming from. The door was ajar. I peeked inside and froze. They were standing at the synthesizer, too close together for a simple discussion of arrangement. His arm around her waist, her fingers in his hair, and the kiss. Long, tender, so familiar. The world stopped. Time stood still. I stared at them, and every second was imprinted in my memory like a scorched brand. Every detail. His hand on her back, her red hair spilling over her shoulders, the sunlight coming through the window and illuminating them as if they were on stage. I don't remember how I ended up on the street. I just ran, not seeing the road, bumping into passers-by. I reached some park and collapsed on a bench. My mind was reeling with fragments of memories. Our wedding, Brody toasting our love, our first concert together, rehearsals, breakfast together on the tour bus. The phone was ringing off the hook, probably Raven. Sound check soon, then the concert. Gotta get back. Gotta pretend everything's okay. Gotta sing about love and loyalty in front of a bunch of fans. I pulled out my notebook, an old habit of writing down whatever came to mind. The lines came pouring out, angry, bitter, desperate. A new song was born out of pain and betrayal. I got back to the club 15 minutes before sound check. They were already there, pretending that nothing had happened. Scarlett was setting up the synthesizers. Brody was checking his bass. The usual. Where have you been? Raven flew up to me. I've been trying to reach you. Took a walk. My voice sounded like a stranger. Shall we start sound check? Ashton signaled to begin. The first chords of Chase the Light, our first hit song. I sang mechanically, no emotion, just words, just notes. Stop! Raven raised her hand. Liam, this isn't working. Where's the energy? Where are the feelings? Feelings? I looked at Scarlett. She was studiously avoiding my gaze. At Brody, he was pretending to be completely absorbed in tuning his instrument. How about a break? Dex suggested, apparently sensing the tension. No time. Raven cut him off. We have a concert in 3 hours. Gather everyone. We continued rehearsing. I sang and played, looking at one point in front of me. I didn't want to see them exchanging glances across the stage. I didn't want to notice her smiling at his jokes into the monitors. After sound check, I locked myself in the bathroom and stood for a long time, resting my hands on the sink. The mirror reflected a stranger, pale, with red eyes and trembling hands. Is it me? Is this all happening to me? There was a knock on the door. Liam? Are you in there? Scarlett's voice. Honey, are you okay? Honey? After what I saw, she's still calling me sweet? Go away, my voice trailed off. Just go away. I heard her stand by the door a little longer, then her footsteps faded into the hallway. I wondered who she'd gone to see. Him? The concert was 2 hours away. I pulled out my phone, opened the gallery, our pictures, so happy, so in love. Here we are at our first performance together. Here we are in the studio recording our debut album. Here we are celebrating the signing of the contract. Every other picture of us has Brody, my best friend, my brother, ex-best friend, ex-brother. The concert must go on, the show must go on. But how? How do you sing about love when your heart is broken? How do you play alongside those who betrayed you? I looked at my reflection and realized tonight would be the hardest performance of my life. But I have to get through it. I have to get on stage and sing every damn song about love and loyalty. And then there's gonna be another song. A song about betrayal. The hotel room in LA felt like a cage. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, strumming my guitar. Last night's concert had turned into a surreal nightmare. I sang and played on automatic, avoiding looking in their direction, but I still saw every look, every gesture, every smile. Now that I knew the truth, all their actions took on a new, painful meaning. Scarlett didn't spend the night in the room. She said she was staying with the cheerleaders. Another lie. We both knew where and with whom she really was. At 6 in the morning, I heard her quietly enter, sneaking into the bathroom. I pretended to be asleep, inhaling the scent of the foreign cologne she'd brought with her. My phone vibrated a message from Raven. Group meeting in 1 hour. Attendance is mandatory. I looked at the time. 10 in the morning. Outside the window, Louisiana was already bustling with life, and I was sitting here in the semi-darkness of the curtains, trying to piece myself back together. Scarlett squirmed on the bed. Good morning. Her voice sounded tentative, like she was tasting ice. I didn't answer, continuing to pluck the strings. The same melody, over and over again, a new song born out of the pain of yesterday. Liam, she sat up on the bed. We need to talk. About what? I didn't lift my eyes from the guitar. About how you practiced with Brody last night? Silence. Only the air conditioner hummed quietly somewhere overhead. Did you see it? It wasn't a question. Yeah. She stood up, started pacing the room, a nervous habit I'd once found endearing. Liam, I didn't want you to find out this way. How did you want it to be? I finally looked up at her. Over a celebratory dinner? Or maybe during the concert? Hey, honey, by the way, I'm sleeping with your best friend. Don't be like that. She wrapped her arms around herself. Should it be like this? I put the guitar aside, standing up. How the hell should you react when your wife and best friend... There was a knock at the door, the maid. We fell silent, looking at each other across the room. She in her favorite t-shirt with the Beatles logo on it. My t-shirt, by the way. Me in the crumpled clothes I'd spent all night in. We should get to the meeting, she finally uttered. Yeah, right. Let's not keep Brody waiting. She flinched as if slapped. The hotel conference room was small and stuffy, despite the air conditioning running. Raven sat at the head of the table, a laptop and a stack of papers in front of her. Dex was in the corner, tapping his sticks on his knee, his way of dealing with tension. Ashton was typing on his phone, occasionally glancing over his glasses at us. Brody was the last to arrive. When he saw me, he froze on the threshold, but he came in and sat as far away from me as possible. Coward. So? Raven looked around at everyone. We have a problem. Last night's concert was, to put it mildly, not the best. I grinned. Not the best? That's putting it mildly. I'd forgotten lyrics, messed up chords, almost ripped my voice out during Dreams We Share, the very song I'd written for our wedding. The label's not happy, Raven continued. We have 5 more shows on the tour. We need to get it together. Pack? I stepped forward. Really? Why don't we talk about why it all went down first? Liam, Raven's cautionary tone. No, let's discuss. I stood up, feeling everything churning inside. Let's tell everyone why the band is falling apart. Not here. Scarlett stood up as well. Please. Where? In the rehearsal room? Where you and Brody? Enough! Raven tapped her palm on the table. Everyone sit down, now. We complied. Years of working with her had taught us when to argue and when not to. I don't know what's going on in your personal life, she spoke slowly, clearly emphasizing each word. And frankly, I don't care. My job is to see this tour through. Your job is to pull together and play the remaining shows like professionals. Is that clear? Everyone nodded silently. Good. Now for the schedule. Rehearsal tonight at 4. Moving to Vegas tomorrow. Ashton, how's the sound? The meeting ran its course, discussing technical details, tweaking the set list, organizational issues. I sat looking at my hands and thinking about how many songs those fingers had written about love and loyalty. How ironic. After the meeting, I headed to the hotel bar. It was only 11 in the morning, but what did it matter now? May I sit down? Dex materialized next to a glass of Coke. I shrugged. He sat down, was silent for a while, then still asked, "How long have you known?" "Saw it yesterday." I took a sip of whiskey. "And you?" "Suspected something the last couple weeks." He swirled the glass. "Sorry I didn't tell you." "Oh, come on. I wouldn't have believed it anyway." We were quiet for a moment. Some pop song about eternal love was playing in the background. It was funny. "What are you gonna do?" "Finish this." I raised my glass. "Then I'm gonna go write a new song." "That's not what I mean." "I know." I finished the whiskey in one gulp. "But right now it's the only thing I can do." In the room, I pulled out a notebook, an old, shabby one with coffee stains on the cover. I began to write, angry, bitter lines pouring out. About betrayal, about broken dreams, about the pain of losing everything at once. Scarlett came in a couple hours later to pack for rehearsal. We didn't speak. She silently gathered her synthesizer scores, and I continued writing, pretending not to notice her presence. "I'll be staying in another room," she finally uttered. "With him?" I didn't lift my head from my notebook. "Liam, just answer." "No. With the backup girls." Lies. Lies again. When did she get to be such a good liar? At rehearsal, for the first time ever, I didn't stand next to Brody during our solo together. I just stayed where I was, playing my part. The fans are going to have to get used to the new choreography. "That won't work." Raven shook her head. "It's your thing. The audience expects it." "The public will get over it." I started packing up my guitar. "Liam," I said no. I spent the evening in my room working on a new song. The lyrics were ready. What was left was to perfect the music. Something heavy, angry, with a jagged rhythm and slashing guitar riffs. The complete opposite of everything I'd written before. My phone was silent. No messages, no calls. Scarlett and I used to text each other all the time, even when we were in different rooms. We shared ideas, jokes, random thoughts. Now there was silence between us, filled with unspoken words and broken promises. At 2 in the morning, I went down to the lobby. I couldn't sleep in an empty room. The bar had already closed, but the 24-hour coffee shop was still open. I took an Americano. Black, no sugar, as always. "Can't sleep?" Ashton appeared out of nowhere, carrying his own cup of coffee. "Working on some new material." He nodded. "Heard some. Powerful stuff." "There's a reason for that." We were silent for a moment, looking out the panoramic windows at nighttime Los Angeles. Somewhere out there, in one of these hotel rooms, my wife is probably lying in the arms of my former best friend, and I'm sitting here drinking chilled coffee with our sound engineer. "You know," Ashton finally spoke up, "sometimes the strongest songs are born out of the deepest pain." I looked at him. "You sound like Lennon." "No. Speaking as someone who's been in music for 30 years, you get over it, and you write about it. And someone going through the same thing will hear your songs and realize they're not alone." I finished my coffee, stood up. "Thanks, Ashton." "For what?" "For not trying to tell me everything's going to be okay." Back in the room, I sat down at my guitar. The sun was slowly rising over the city, and I played, over and over, honing every riff, every transition. A new song was taking shape, a story of betrayal put to music. Maybe Ashton was right. Maybe it really would become something more than just an outpouring of pain and anger. There was another day ahead, another rehearsal, another concert, and I had to get through it. For the music, for the people who would come to the concert. Las Vegas greeted us with neon lights and stifling heat. I was sitting in the dressing room of the Pearl Theater Club, mindlessly strumming my guitar. On the next chair was my concert jacket, the same denim one with scuffs on the elbows. I hadn't worn it in 3 concerts. I couldn't. Too many memories. The last 2 days had become a blur of pain and anger. I'd barely slept, eating random snacks from vending machines, sitting for hours on a new song. It was almost ready, hard, angry, with a jagged rhythm and lyrics that reeked of bitter betrayal. There were voices in the hallway, Scarlett and Brody. They tried to keep their distance from me, but it was nearly impossible in the cramped backstage area. Every chance encounter turned into silent torture. 10 minutes to sound check, Raven's voice echoed down the hallway. I mechanically checked the strings, plugged the guitar into the amp. Ashton was already at the console, his gray whiskers glinting in the spotlight. He was the only one who still talked to me normally, not trying to comfort me or give me advice, just doing his job and occasionally keeping me company during late-night coffee vigils. Sound check. My voice sounded hoarse through the monitors. I hadn't slept in 36 hours, only dozing intermittently on the bus on the way to Vegas. Scarlett took her place at the synthesizers. New black dress, hair in a high ponytail. I used to love kissing her neck when she did her hair like that. Now that memory resonated with a pain somewhere under my ribs. Let's start with Chase the Light, Raven commanded. The first chords, familiar to the point of pain. A song about finding your way, about dreams, about hope. It was ironic. I sang mechanically, investing no emotion, just mouthing the words. Stop! Raven raised her hand. Liam, where's the energy? This is our biggest hit. Sorry, I was thinking. I ran my hand over my face. My eyes were blurry from lack of sleep. Why don't we take a break? Dex suggested, giving me a concerned look. There's no time, Raven cut off. We have a concert in 4 hours. Let's do it again. We started again. This time I tried, really tried. But every time Brody came to the center of the stage for his solo, I started to shake. We used to play this moment together, back to back, getting the crowd going. Now I stayed in my seat, turning my back to the amps. After sound check, I escaped to the service corridor. I needed to be alone. Pulled out my phone, opened the gallery. Why? To torture myself. But my fingers were already flipping through the photos, our joint performances, rehearsals, moments backstage. Here's Scarlett laughing at some joke Brody made. Here's the three of us after a successful concert. Here she's kissing me and he's standing next to me smiling. When did it start? When did friendship turn into betrayal? Hey! Dex's voice snapped me out of my bitter thoughts. Here you go. He held out a cup of coffee. Thanks. I took a sip. Black, no sugar. He remembered how I liked it. Is the new song ready? Almost. Will you play it? I hesitated. No one had heard this song yet. It was too personal, too painful. Come on. He sat down next to me. It can't get any worse, right? I pulled out my guitar, started playing. The lyrics flowed by themselves. Words about betrayal, about broken trust, about how painful it is to lose everything at once. I almost shouted the last chorus, feeling my hands shake. Shit, Dex whistled when I finished. That's powerful. Too personal? Just right. When are we playing? Tonight. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. Are you sure? Raven won't approve of the set list changes. Whatever. The concert was 3 hours away. I sat in the dressing room, rereading the lyrics to the new song. The letters were blurring in front of my eyes from lack of sleep. Steps, voices, laughter could be heard in the corridor. The usual pre-concert bustle. The door opened. Scarlett. She froze on the threshold when she saw me. I'm sorry. She took a step back. I thought no one was here. Your lipstick. I nodded at the table by the mirror where her forgotten makeup bag lay. Yeah, thanks. She quickly grabbed the makeup bag and was about to leave, but suddenly stopped. Liam. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't. She walked away, and I was left sitting there, clutching the sheet of paper with the lyrics to the new song in my hands. The paper was wet with sweat, or was it tears? I didn't realize it anymore. An hour before the concert, Raven showed up with the news. Full house, lots of press. Try to give it your best shot. I nodded, not listening. All I could think about was the new song. Every word, every chord I'd suffered through sleepless nights. Just before I went on stage, I put on my jean jacket. To hell with the memories. Tonight it would serve a different purpose. It would be armor, protection from what was to come. The hall exploded with screams as we took the stage. The first songs were a blur. I sang and played on automatic, not looking at anyone. About the fifth song, I noticed Brody trying to catch my eye. I ignored him. In the middle of the concert, after Dreams We Share, the wedding song, I stepped up to the microphone. This next song is new. It's called Betrayal, and it's about those who break trust. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Scarlett flinch, Brody tense up. Raven was backstage shouting something into her walkie-talkie, probably trying to figure out what was going on. The first chord was sharp, angry. The hall went silent. I sang, staring straight into the darkness of the auditorium, putting all the pain of the last few days into every word. The song flowed, the story of how the best friend becomes the worst enemy, how love turns into poison, how the world built on trust collapses. I almost shouted the last chorus, feeling my voice breaking. There was absolute silence in the hall, and then an explosion of applause. They didn't understand. They didn't know that every word was true, that it wasn't just a song but a cry of the soul. After the concert, I locked myself in the dressing room, ignoring the knock on the door and Raven's voice. "Liam, we need to talk, now!" I had no energy, none at all. I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. 40 hours without sleep, 2 concerts, endless rehearsals, and that song, it had taken the last of my strength. There was another knock on the door, quieter this time. Ashton's voice. "Liam, open up, I brought coffee." I stood up, opening the door. He silently held out a cup, sat down next to me on the floor. "Powerful song," he finally said. "Very honest." I took a sip of coffee. Hot, black, salvation. "You know," Ashton continued, "sometimes you have to let it all out. Otherwise it eats away at you from the inside out." I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was sore from the concert, and my head was dizzy with fatigue. "Raven's furious, of course," he grinned. "But the audience is thrilled. They're already posting videos online." "I don't care," my voice sounded hoarse. "Just don't care about anything." We sat in silence while somewhere behind the wall, technicians were dismantling equipment. The usual sounds of concert life, clanking metal, muffled voices, the noise of machines loading. "What's next?" Ashton asked. "I don't know." I finished my coffee. "I really don't know." The last concert of the tour was supposed to be in Seattle, the place where it all started 3 months ago. I stood at my hotel room window, looking out at the rainy city. It had been a week since that Vegas show. A week of silence, avoiding stares and awkward encounters in the hallways. The new song, Betrayal, was suddenly a hit. Fans posted amateur recordings online, demanded to perform it at every concert. They didn't know the subtext, they didn't realize that every performance was like a knife to the stomach. To them, it was just another song about heartbreak. The phone vibrated. A message from Raven. "Meeting in an hour. Last concert should be perfect." I grinned. Perfect? How could anything be perfect when everything around me was falling apart? The room smelled like coffee. I'd been up all night writing a new song. The last song. On the table was an open notebook, scribbled in hurried handwriting. Corrections, strike-throughs, coffee stains, the story of the last few days set to music. Someone knocked on the door. Dex. "You okay?" He held out a paper bag of sandwiches. "Fine." I took the bag, though I didn't feel like eating. I'd barely tasted food for the last week. "New material?" I nodded at the notebook. "I want to play it tonight. Last gig after all." Raven's gonna be pissed. When hasn't she been pissed for the last week? Dex sat down on the edge of the bed, tapping his chopsticks on his knee, a familiar nervous gesture. "You know, the band doesn't have to end." "It should." I closed the notebook. "We both know that." Tension reigned in the meeting. Scarlett sat in the far corner, rubbing the sleeve of her sweater. Brody is against the opposite wall, avoiding looking in my direction. There was a chasm between us that could no longer be bridged. Raven talked about the technical writer, about the set list, about what the press and label reps would be like. I listened half-heartedly, going over the chords of the new song in my head. It should be the last one, a point in a story that started here 3 months ago. "Liam?" Raven's voice brought me back to reality. "Are you listening?" "Yes," I stood up. And I have a suggestion for the set list. I want to close the concert with a new song. Don't even think about it. She shook her head. No surprises. That's out of the question. My voice sounded calm. The last song is mine. Liam, or I won't go on stage at all. Silence. Everyone looked at me, Dex with understanding, Ashton with sympathy, Scarlett with fear in her eyes. Only Brody was stubbornly studying the floor. Okay, Raven finally spoke up, but I want to hear her first. You'll hear it at the concert. Soundcheck went on in sepulchral silence. We played like automatons, crisp, professional, without a single mistake or spark of life. The audience won't notice. They come for the emotions, for the stories, for the music. They don't need to know that behind every note, there is pain and betrayal. I was changing in the dressing room when Scarlett walked in. She froze in the doorway, as if hesitant to enter. Sorry, she took a step back. I'm getting my makeup bag. Come on in. I pulled on my jean jacket one last time. I was just leaving. Liam, her voice trembled. This new song, it's about us. I finally looked her in the eye. About what's left of us. She nodded, biting her lip. I remembered the gesture. She always did that when she was on the verge of tears. Before, I would have hugged her, comforted her. Now I just walked out of the dressing room, leaving her alone. The hall was full. 2,000 people had come to the last concert of the tour. They didn't know it would be the last one at all. I walked on stage to the roar of the crowd, feeling something other than pain for the first time in a week. Gratitude. Gratitude to these people who sang my songs, believed in my stories, lived my music. The first set went by like a blur. I was singing old hits, smiling, interacting with the audience. Professional to the end, Raven can be proud. Betrayal. They met with shouts of delight. I sang it, looking directly at Scarlett and Brody, putting all the bitterness of the last few weeks into every word. They stood there, eyes downcast, taking this public confession as a well-deserved punishment. And finally, the last song. I stepped to the microphone. This is a new song. It's called Goodbye, and it's about how sometimes you have to let go of the things you love the most. The first chords are soft, sad, not angry, not blaming, just sadness and acceptance of the inevitable. I sang of love that dies, of friendships turned to ashes, of dreams shattered by reality, and about forgiveness, not for them, for myself. I sang the last chorus with my eyes closed, feeling tears running down my cheeks. When I opened my eyes, I saw that Scarlett wasn't the only one crying. Many people in the audience had taken out their phones with flashlights on. A sea of lights in the darkness, like stars saying goodbye to a dying universe. Thank you, Seattle, I bowed. Thank you for everything. The curtain fell to the roar of the crowd demanding a sequel, but there wouldn't be one. Not tonight, not with this lineup. I was in the dressing room picking up my guitar when Raven walked in. Beautiful song. Goodbye song. I know. She took a seat next to me. Have you decided yet? Yes. What are you going to do next? I zipped up my guitar case. Write new songs, somewhere far away from here. She nodded. Good luck, Liam. You're talented. Don't let it... She waved her hand. Break you. I walked out the service entrance into the rainy Seattle night. Behind me were the screams of fans, the music, the spotlight. Ahead was the unknown and a clean slate. New songs, new stories, new life. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Scarlett. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't answer. The rain was getting heavier, but I was in no hurry to catch a cab. Somewhere else, the band Eclipse had ceased to exist. But the music, it would remain. In songs about love and betrayal, friendship and betrayal, goodbye.